It's like a lawyer's fucking dream.
Yeah, 100%.
This is going to be lawsuit central.
2027 is going to be the year of the lawsuit. Welcome to Your Work Friends. I'm Mel Plett.
I am Francesca Ranieri.
And we break down the now and next of work so you stay ahead. Francesca, how are you?
Good. Can't believe July's almost over. It's a little nutty. Time.
Summer loving. I don't want to let it go.
I know.
I want to let it go.
I mean, we still have another month, but August just, does it really count?
I don't know. I don't think so. July just feels like that's summer. Prime summer months here. What are we talking about today?
So typically we've done new headlines where we break down news every other week, but we've decided to move to a monthly and recap what the biggest signals happening in work for that month, mostly geared to the US. In July, we've been tracking 5 different themes around employment policy, the job market, AI landscape, return to office, and all right, let's get into it. So, Mel, AI obviously continues to be the huge story. What was the biggest story happening in the AI landscape for you?
All right. For those of you who've been following Workday, they had a lawsuit come out with them on June 22nd. Judge Rita Lynn ruled that the core disparate impact discrimination claims against them in Mobley versus Workday can proceed as a collective action suit. There were allegations that Workday's AI applicant screening tools disadvantaged candidates by age, race, and disability. Workday's tools processed roughly 1.1 billion job applications during the relevant period of this suit. Anyone 40 plus who applied through Workday's platform since September 2020 could be part of this class action lawsuit. The court rejected Workday's defense that it was, quote unquote, just a tool provider, because Workday builds, trains, and runs the screening models from its California headquarters. It can be held to California's employment law. The racial discrimination claim tied to direct employer conduct was dismissed, but the broader disparate impact theory has survived. Employers using third-party AI screening tools can be on the hook even without the intent to discriminate. This is important for all of us to be following at this time, because if you're within an organization, you need to care about your tech stack and the decisions you're allowing it to make. You have to be paying deep attention to the workflows that you're designing for the organization and how you're making decisions and hiring decisions, and are they compliant with all of the legislation? And good news for employees, but also good news for employers too, who use this technology. Coming from a recruiting background, I understand the usefulness as a screening tool to help you cut through thousands and thousands of resumes, but it can't be an excuse for not catching bias or discrimination impacts, discriminatory impacts. Yeah. What do you think?
I am watching Workday as a kind of a canary in the coal mine in terms of what's happening. In July, something else happened, which was 26 Meta employees alleged that AI influenced productivity and ranking systems, disproportionately selected workers who had taken leave or had accommodation. And Meta denied that AI made performance or termination decisions, but it's getting taken to court. What makes this case a little bit different than Workday and harder for employees is that it's not if the bot made the final decision. That's not what is going to be the case here. AI can summarize performance, rank teams, and identify low activity or recommend a list that a human approves. The problem here is that employees rarely have access to that data. They rarely can understand what made that choice with all those algorithms. There's so many systems determining all of these types of things, from performance to even looking at, are you at your computer? Those are all data inputs that go into this decision. It's hard to suss out what made the final call and where all of those data points came from. Making discrimination or wrongful termination claims become difficult to prove. And I think a lot of organizations might be banking on that. It's harder than hell to prove. Is the litigation examines the entire decision chain, not necessarily who clicked the final termination button. So I think Workday is starting to open that up around Is it just the tool or is it the whole algorithm is the issue? We have to claim that there was bias in the algorithm and that by Workday are culpable for that. If organizations are also making these kind of decisions, the whole decision chain could be at risk, not just the person who touched the button for it, which opens up a whole fucking can of worms around what can we litigate AI. It's like a lawyer's fucking dream.
Yeah, 100%.
This is going to be lawsuit central.
2027 is going to, I just feel like that's going to be the year of the lawsuit. We're starting to see it pick up, but I honestly think it's going to be full force 2027. A lot of stuff's going to go down because we've called it the Wild West, right? This is what happens when you don't have a lot of regulation. These suits start to pop up and then you start to see laws being made. So,
yeah, it's,
oh man.
And as the job market becomes worse,
yeah,
these lawsuits are going to go up as well. Lack of trust in organizations. Yes. Bucket number one, the AI story.
What do you want to talk about next?
Let's talk about the job market next.
Okay.
This is what drives me nuts about the job market story right now is that on paper, it looks okay. But you talk to any single person who's been looking for a job and it is not okay. What did you see in July, Mel?
The same. You and I have talked about this on LinkedIn. Whenever I check that out, typically I would see regular profiles. I think I was sharing with you offline at some point. I'm like, oh, now when I look at people you may know, I see more open to work signs. It almost feels like the 2008 housing market where every house on a street had a for sale sign or foreclosure sign on it. That's how it feels looking at LinkedIn now when you're like people you may know profiles. So there were two quick things. One, the layoff machine that keeps running. And actually, it was called out recently by TechCrunch. They're publicly asking, is AI the real cause of all of this or just that convenient story for the post-pandemic overhiring corrections? And you and I've said this too, like it's bogus that AI is the reason for all of these. That's kind of a lazy excuse. And they were saying if you're using AI as the reason for conducting layoffs, then you're not really being strategic about how you're implementing AI within your organization, which I wholly agree with. As of July 23rd, there have been 322 layoff events in 2026, impacting over 205,000 workers, roughly about 1,000 job losses a day. These are the rough estimates. This could change tomorrow because every single, I think even this morning, there was a headline, our Oracle laying off something like 20,000 people. So don't hold me to all these numbers because they're changing every day. We know Microsoft cut 4,800 roles, 2% of their workforce on July 6th. Xbox took the hardest hit with 3,200 roles. Their EVP and Chief People Officer, Amy Coleman, wrote in a memo, AI is changing how work gets done. Some of the tasks we do can now be automated. Yet we're also seeing companies having to massively rehire engineers because AI didn't make the cut or was costing too much money. Intel started a new round of cuts centered on its data center group. July 20th, 54% of 2026 layoff events explicitly cite AI and automation as a driver. So this is interesting. What do you think?
Listen, I do think that some of this is AI, right? I think some of it is people making big bets that AI can do the work of humans, especially in things like customer service or some of these more entry-level roles. I think some people are making huge choices that they're just going to lop it off and go. There is some of that. There's absolutely some of the whole, like, we overhired and we really aren't making a plan. And this looks very good to investors to say we're doing this for AI, but that is only going to last until someone says, show me the money. That's what I'm looking for. We were here this time last year talking about people just wanting people to adopt AI, just use AI. Usage was the big KPI usage, which we know doesn't equate to productivity or revenue gain whatsoever.
Any business results.
Now we're sitting in this year being like, okay, Uber blew through their AI budget in 4 months. Now CFOs are asking, show me the freaking money. Find that you want to do this. Find that you're doing this from an organizational structure. That's your prerogative. 6 months from now, 12 months from now, I'm going to be asking, did it work?
Yeah, what was the ROI on that decision? The other thing that I was seeing was there's a lot of the no hire, no fire, and workers feeling like they're in a situationship. Not hilarious from none of us should be in a situationship with our job, but I just thought the terminology made sense. So the June jobs report released July 2nd. So it's a roundup for July. Only 57,000 non-farm payroll jobs were added, and unemployment held at 4.2%. Those initial jobless claims for the week ending July 4th dropped to 215,000. Mass layoffs weren't spiking broadly. So when you look at that, economists are calling this the low hire, low fire market. Companies aren't adding headcount. They're also not letting people go en masse. People aren't quitting voluntarily either. And the people that are staying feel like they're in a situationship with their job, which is why we're seeing the lowest trust in years, the lowest productivity in years, lowest level of employee engagement in years. And this matters because those things aren't soft. They impact your innovation. They impact your ability to execute on your business strategy, and it's going to hit the bottom line. So I just think it's an interesting time, like almost like employee care is going out the window, but that is the base of running and operating your business.
Similarly, the one thing I was looking at with the job market that is really starting to freak me out is the long-term unemployment numbers. If you've been looking for a job for months, I want to give you 4 numbers that I think are really critical, because I have so many people I know that have been looking for a job for longer than a year, a lot of them 40 plus, but that is roughly how many jobs the US economy added in 2025. The second number is 404,000. That's how many jobs healthcare alone added. Healthcare basically created more than twice as many jobs as the economy did. Last year, healthcare and social services accounted for 95% of the jobs that were created, which means every other sector was essentially flat or shrinking, and mostly shrinking. The other number is 2 million. That's roughly how many Americans have been unemployed for more than 6 months. That's the highest level in 5 years. And the last number is 6.2 million. That's how many people say they want a job but aren't counted as unemployed because they aren't actively looking anymore. 6.2 million. Okay. So if you're in anything besides basically healthcare, your job market is freaking awful. It is either flat or most likely shrinking, right? That 6.2 million is something that's not even counted in the unemployment numbers. Go ahead.
No, you and I talk about this all the time. There are massive amounts of people who don't even count in the overall what goes out in reports. And it's typically people that are disabled. It is typically people who are people of color. It is women potentially, and also that age group of 40 plus that are counted in that group. And then you have those who've been laid off who might be working part-time. They're not whole, but they're not counted in that number because they're working part-time gigs or contract gigs or things just to hold them over. So they're not counted in that overall report either. So the report looks good, but what's on paper versus what's in reality never matches.
It doesn't. So if you put that 6.2 million in for the 2 million that it's currently counting right now, our unemployment number would be awful. In August, I want to see if this number goes up. My gut is it will. There's nothing in the ether that says it's getting better. Typically, things that impact a job market that would provide more jobs are more organizations making more capital investments, or there's an influx of cash somewhere. But with inflation numbers the way they are and political shit happening the way it is, we're going into a midterm, which is continued uncertainty. I don't see this number getting better anytime soon.
Absolutely not. No.
All right, RTO.
In kind of shocking news, California's Governor Newsom put into effect a mandate that started July 1st, where state workers went from 2 days a week in office to 4 days a week, affecting 90,000 to 100,000 employees. So those state, local, I think it was SEIU Local 1000 filed an unfair labor practice complaint and protested on the Capitol steps as a result of this new mandate. The state audit reportedly found telework delivered higher quality and more efficient work, but Newsom is holding the mandate for RTO anyway. Texas's governor also tried a full in-office ban in 2025, reversed it 3 months later under worker pressure. Newsom notably has not backed down despite the audit findings. Private sector has continued to follow Employers like Sherwin-Williams ended their hybrid policy entirely. 5 days on site with remote day banks of 12 days per year, capped at 2 per month and no rollover. Fidelity is moving many teams to 5 days starting in September. Airbus is tightening their engineer RTO from 3 to 4 days starting in September. What were some of the RTO things you were seeing?
So I'm expanding the definition of RTO because return to office typically means the office that you're used to, but there's another trend with RTO. A lot of organizations are doing what they're calling consolidated location strategy. So they're moving headquarters or they're moving facets of their business to locations where they get better taxation or tax abatements because they can offer unemployment, or they're making decisions to consolidate their space because that's an expensive cost to one location. So you see this with things like Samsung moving their headquarters or Verizon's with their stores, et cetera. Employees might be sitting in Boston and now they're asking people to move to Texas.
That's happened to plenty of friends of mine before, where suddenly they're like, you have 6 months to either move with us or find a new job.
So a lot of times it's from more expensive places to cheaper places. So more expensive major metros to cheaper sub-metros. So there might be a benefit to employees, i.e. cheaper cost of living. Maybe you can get a bigger house, all of this good jazz. But in order to keep your job, you need to move your entire family, your entire life. And on top of that, sometimes they're adjusting pay. So as your pay is getting reduced, this is all a cost savings measure. It could be beneficial to some employees, but it is uprooting people's lives pretty significantly. In my mind, in addition to a 4-day work week, we're asking you to come back to a regular office. Sometimes we're actually asking you to move your life completely.
Move across the country. For people who rely on family that's close by for things like childcare, although cost of living might be cheaper, their expenses might increase. We haven't done the research in quite a bit, but last time we checked, maybe a year ago, the cost of returning to office per person was about $60 a day. Wear and tear on your vehicle, parking, gas, cost of lunch potentially, childcare expenses. This could equate to upwards of anywhere from $8,000 to $12,000 a year of your annual salary just to go to work.
Yeah. The other question I'd be asking here is, who captures the impact of flexibility and technology, right? What I find fascinating is we have the tech better than ever, where people could work wherever the hell they want. Employers can get the best employees from everywhere in the world, yet we are asking people to not leverage that flexibility.
I feel like my Nana would call that cutting off your nose to spite your face.
Yes.
You're really just shortening your talent pool, which seems like not a good business decision. But also there's tons of research and studies that continuously show that workers do give higher quality of work when they have this flexibility, that they do work more efficiently when they have this flexibility. Yet organizations are just tightly holding on to this old way of working. And I don't understand the driver beyond things like commercial real estate needing to hold up that certain industry versus thinking like, how do we tackle both issues together? I just don't know what the driver is here, because we do know there's not employee experience certainly isn't happening. We hear all the time, people are just in their office taking virtual meetings.
I don't know.
So
it's as we have the opportunity to become more flexible, we're just not. In policy news, there were two stories that we were tracking. The first one for me, there's less visibility at literally probably the worst time. The EEOC moved towards rescinding annual EEO-1 workforce demographic reporting requirements for employers. You might be asking, Francesca, what the hell is that? Those are the reporting requirements around what is your demographic makeup of your employee base. So if you want to ask the question around how many women are on your board or how many women to men to gender non-binary do you have in your organization, those were required by law to be submitted. Supporters of this call the reporting burdensome. Critics argue it's essential for identifying systematic disparities and enforcing anti-discrimination law. The pay gap for women has become worse. And for women of color, it's become significantly worse. This is getting worse. So to take this reporting out, not the best time. No bueno in my mind. Basically, this is put in by the Trump administration. This is also in Project 2025. So it is one of those things that they wanted to get done. There is an argument that at the exact same time, workplace decisions are becoming less visible. We may stop collecting one of the data sets that helps us see people that need to be seen.
Yeah.
A lot of organizations should, in my mind, and will continue to track this data because it helps them with any anti-discrimination or employment lawsuit that may come. But it's not a good move, especially if we need more transparency and not less. And especially as we see women and women of color getting hit so hard in these layoff stories, these are numbers we need to keep looking at.
I always feel like if you're trying to hide the data, there's a nefarious reason for it.
I don't know if it's even nefarious. I just don't think they give a shit. They don't care. They don't even understand the story.
If you don't track it, then you don't have to do anything about it. And that's the nefarious part of it, because the impacts are vast. And then when you think about how you correct something like that years down the road, I don't know, there's an accountability component too, because in the best case of scenarios, organizations are holding themselves accountable. But pre-legislation, we know that there are organizations who don't. And so this was that way to hold those organizations that don't hold themselves accountable to have accountability.
I think if you want to look at how this is going to play out, look at what they did to BLS data. We don't really know what's going on with unemployment or the labor market because they bastardized that. The other things to look at is the DEI stuff. Where we're taking out DEI, some organizations chose to keep going with it. Most did not. The problem is it's going to be all over the place and we're not going to get a cohesive story. And that's the really sad part. Yeah.
I'm going to edit on some positive policy news for employees out there. Pay transparency laws are expanding state by state. That's a good sign. Virginia's new pay transparency law took effect July 1st. New York's been doing this for a very long time. California's been doing this for a very long time. If you're just an employee, you're always like, why can't they just have real pay bands within the job description? I don't need to be surprised. Let's just have an adult conversation. So their law took effect July 1st. Employers must include a wage or salary range in every single job posting. Maine's law will be effective July 28th and requires employers with 10 plus employees to post pay ranges. A July 20 industry report out of Outsolve reframed the compliance conversation, noting the risk isn't whether to be transparent anymore, it's whether transparency is now exposing pay inequities that were already there. A lack of pay transparency is now treated as a compliance and reputational failure, not a neutral choice. This continues state by state, is kind of patchwork for what the federal government isn't mandating. Vermont, New Jersey, others are already in effect. Global employers are also managing this from two different pay transparency regimes because the EU has their pay transparency directive rolling out this year. So you might see that influencing and being a driver for how some global enterprise organizations start to become even more transparent around their pay because of the EU requirements, whether or not the states start to offer that. So this is actually really positive news for employees, this level of pay transparency.
About time, man.
I know.
God.
Just do it.
So our last section is, are we okay? There's some other, it's just an interesting time. And there were two stories that got me around. Are we okay? One of which is retreat designers are using things like sack races, human pyramids, and children's museums to build trust and connection, which is interesting because as organizations have removed things like Slack and even informal interaction, even as they're going back to return to office, it's like we're removing any kind of breathing room in the system. They discovered that things like trust and friendship and relationship building went away. So their response is, let's send everybody to a children's birthday party to regroup for just an afternoon. That's going to work.
I can't believe we're back here. Like this kind of stuff, it goes along with a pizza party from the early 2000s or game nights or whatever else. People want to be home with their families and their friends. And most people going to a half-day retreat wish they didn't have to because they have to come back to catch up with what they were doing at work. So then they're playing catch up. You and I covered horror stories of retreats, like the people that got lost in the woods for that leadership trust hike. They had to get rescued. If you want to build connection within your organization, give every employee a certain amount of budget every month so that they can go out to lunch or take someone for a coffee walk or do it on their own time. Do not do these forced retreats. This is just not a way to build connection or relationships at all.
No.
Yeah.
Or build your organization so it naturally does that, right? I mean,
Correct.
you can literally
How you work. Yeah.
engineer your organization to have that Slack, to have that interaction, to organize the work so it can do that. Okay, the last story here is white collar men wearing shorts to work sparks controversy. This was a New York Post article that came out. Apparently, as the heat is ticking up in a lot of different regions, office shorts are a tiny but telling fight over which norms still define professionalism after work itself has changed. And I find this fascinating because people are getting upset that men are showing their thighs and their hairy legs. I gotta tell you, I was completely here. Yeah. I gotta tell you, I was completely here for this story, mostly because women for so long have been, you can't show your ankles, you can't show your legs without tights, you have to be wearing this, you have to be wearing that. I'm here for the backlash against thigh hair.
We have been policed on our attire our entire lifetimes. I remember when I went out for my first professional job search when I was 23, and I was told by the recruiter I was working with that I could not wear pantsuits. I had to wear skirt suits only with pantyhose. And I was like, why? What does that have to do with me being able to perform the job?
My ultimate hope here is that people can wear whatever the hell they want to work as long as it's fine. Are we shorts? I guess we are. Yes.
Interesting times. Thanks for joining us today. Music was by Pink Zebra. This episode was produced, recorded, and edited by yours truly, Francesca and I, of Your Work Friends. And we're an indie pod, folks. We drop new episodes each week on Tuesday. So please come back to check them out.
Subscribe on the platform of your choice. And if you want one big, meaty insight about work every single month, subscribe to our newsletter on yourworkfriends.com.
Bye, friends.